Hello, team members. I am Andrea Knight, the Event and Membership Manager with the St. Johns County Chamber of Commerce. Today, in our Chamber Conversation series, we have the pleasure of speaking with Joanna Alicea, CEO of the Ability Tree First Coast, about the top 3 attitudinal barriers experienced in the workplace employers should consider as they return back to work. Joanna, hello, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to have this moment with you guys.
As are we. Today, we've been able to identify, through the United States Census Bureau in Northeast Florida that there are around 117. I'm so sorry. I didn't turn my phone on silent. Okay. Alicea.
Say.
Alicea. Okay. That is so frustrating. There we go. All right. Take 3. 3, 2, 1. Hello, Chamber members. My name is Andrea Knight, and I am the Event and Membership Manager with the St. Johns County Chamber of Commerce. Today, in our Chamber Conversation series, we have the pleasure of speaking with Joanna Alicea, the CEO of Ability Tree First Coast, about the top 3 attitudinal barriers experienced in the workplace that employers should be considering as they return back to work. Joanna, hello, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be able to have a conversation with you guys.
Discovered some interesting facts about Northeast Florida through the United States Census Bureau, and that in Northeast Florida, that there are around 117,000 individuals under the age of 55, that have been diagnosed with some form of a disability. We're locally here in St. Johns County, we have about 11.5%, which is approximately 26,000 residents that have been diagnosed with
right.
So your information will be critical, as employers are returning back to work. And what is one of the first, attitudinal barriers that, employers should be considering?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's important for employers as they're going back to work to keep these barriers in mind. I think a lot of times they don't realize that they're even in the back of their minds. And so the first one I would say in my top 3 is backlash. I know it's a little bit of a strong word, but that's pretty much one of the things that we see happen is that employees, even more so than employers, view that individuals with disabilities are given unfair advantages, such as like easier work requirements if they work alongside them. And that's actually a misunderstanding. That is definitely a negative barrier, because even though the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA, they do have things in place for employers to keep in mind when they are hiring and just the setup of their establishment. The ADA does not require special privileges for people with disabilities, just equal opportunities. And that's where the difference lies, is that there's a difference between having privileges versus equal opportunities in order to be able to meet the needs of the employer. And back in 2015, they looked at the percentage of people with disabilities who are employed versus those without disabilities. And there was over a 41% spread between those who get hired and those who don't, where those with disabilities, it was just under 35% were actually employed. So as you can see, there's definitely an opportunity for employers, even in our community, because we do have over 11% of individuals with disabilities. There is definitely an opportunity for us to step up our game to be able to consider those with disabilities in the workplace.
That's really helpful information. What would you say the second, identifier is?
I would probably say ignorance. Ignorance is not bliss when it comes to looking at business and how things are done. People with disabilities a lot of times are dismissed as incapable of accomplishing tasks, so they're not given the opportunity to display those skills that they do have. Just because somebody isn't able to walk, just because somebody isn't able to necessarily be able to use expressive language doesn't mean that their ability to receive information and actually provide supports in other formats is available. And so people with disabilities often accomplish the same tasks as those without disabilities, but it's not seen because it's not something that people are aware of, hence the ignorance that happens in our community. I mean, people who are deaf are still playing baseball. They still enjoy music. Those who are blind are able to still, tell time, visit museums, and, those with intellectual disabilities are still able to have creative means in order to actually come up with some interesting ways of improving, enhancing the work environment. And so when you're looking at having an employee that has a disability, allowing them to bring their level of skills and what that looks like. And sometimes they are actually able to offer something that a lot of times you may not even have thought of.
No, that's great information. And what would be the third barrier you say that would be experienced?
The third barrier, I would say, is fear. And this is what I always call the elephant in the room, because people many times are afraid that they're going to say or do the wrong thing. So in order not to offend, they end up just dismissing the person altogether, or they avoid the person altogether. And so they try to avert their own discomfort by avoiding the individual and or the individual's family. And so it's important to recognize that when meeting somebody with a disability, it's the same as meeting somebody from a different culture. The more you are around them, the more you become familiar. And then the more you're familiar, obviously the comfort level increases. And so having someone with a disability in the workplace gives a whole different dimension, dynamic of the environment, where there is a higher level of understanding, inclusion, collaboration that happens, because you're able to get a different perspective than just pretty much putting them on the side, saying that they're not able to do it because of the discomfort that you feel.
No, this information is extremely helpful. So just to kind of recap, the three barriers you say would be backlash, ignorance, and fear. Would you summarize that and say that that's a great?
Yes.
overview?
Yeah, I would say, there's several barriers, but I would say those are the top three that seem to have the greater impact on someone with a disability. And I think if those three things were overcome in the workplace, you would see just an overall different dynamic, a different culture in the workplace, something that is much more inclusive, more understanding, especially if you have individuals working with you that have disabilities. Imagine the people that are coming into your establishment, those that are becoming your patrons. Then you're going to have that higher level of understanding, that higher level of comfort, in order to be a place that someone's going to want to go back to.
Now, this information that you provided today was fantastic.
Thank you.
Members, to get a hold of Joanna and to ask additional questions about resources and topics of discussion today, we will have her information available at the end of our recording. Joanna, thank you again so much. This was a very insightful topic today.
Thank you for having me.